3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to another one of our Simpsons season reviews. I started this actually last year. I started off with season 1, which was quite a nice short season. However, it did take a long time to review every single episode, which is what I'm going to do now with season 2. Yes, season 2. Now, I will say this. A lot of these other seasons, like I said, it depends on when I get the time to do these recordings. It also depends, on how many episodes there are. So, if this episode or this season is split into 2, I do apologise. I should also point out I do have a bit of a cold. So, yes, I do apologise for that as well. That said, as we're talking about season 2, I have got a little notepad here full of notes. And just like before, I'm going to be talking about every single episode individually, and say if I like them, if I don't like them, if I recommend them, maybe give them a rating, maybe out of 10, possibly. You never know. Also, I'll give like a overall thoughts on season 2, which is usually something that I'm going to do right now at the beginning, and that is season 2 is quite possibly one of the best seasons of The Simpsons ever. In fact, it is probably the best season of The Simpsons ever. It's right up there with the likes of season 6, which is another one of the best seasons of The Simpsons. And you're going to see why it's one of the best seasons, because this season has so many 10 out of 10 just overly fantastic episodes which I consider some of the best in the entirety of its history. And this is only the second season, and there's a reason behind it. For one thing, it's longer than the first season, and not only that, they had a bit more of a budget. They can animate better, but it also was a time for The Simpsons to start shining. It's a time for The Simpsons to actually start promoting themselves, start pushing themselves forward, making themselves seem a hell of a lot more, impactful, as opposed to what they were in season 1, where they were just that awkward animated show about a yellow family. This one feels a lot more, has a lot more oomph to it. This was them, thinking, right, we gotta give them our all. They did so pretty successfully. So, without further ado, let's go through every episode. And if it's split in half, then I do apologise, so this might be part 1. But if not, then we might be able to go through every single episode very briefly, give a bit of summary, and let me tell you what I think of them. So this is the first episode of the second season of The Simpsons, and already we have reached what many consider to be the absolute greatest Simpsons episode ever, and that is Bart Gets an F. And by God, is it such a great episode. Basically, Bart has to do a history test, but he's not very good at school. He fails almost all his tests, he's a bad kid, and a consequence is that if he doesn't improve, he'll have to repeat, I think it's the 3rd or 4th grade, I might be wrong. I don't know how Americans do it. So Bart has to repeat his year again, and he has horrible dreams about him being an old man while his own kids are in the same position and still failing at everything. And for once, Bart decides, you know what, I'm going to revise. I'm going to actually concentrate and revise for this history test, and I'm going to do good. I'm going to actually go ahead and get all the grades. However, as we find out in the end, it's all for nothing. Despite all the revision he does, he still fails. And it was only just by a bit of luck that Edna Krabappel decides, you know what, you don't deserve this. You've shown that you have studied and that you are giving us, good pointers here, giving us good facts, as Bart sprouts out a bunch of facts out loud, and you know what, you deserve a second chance. And Bart does get a second chance, and it ends on a high note. And This is just a great episode. Like, it's probably one of the more depressing episodes of The Simpsons. It's probably one of the darker episodes of The Simpsons because, and there's a reason why so many people love it, and it's because it is probably one of the more realistic episodes of The Simpsons. You know, how many times have we seen an episode where, or any show for example, where a character, you know, has to, you know, perform well on this test or this exam, or else they're just going to get booted off the course, or they're just going to be, you know, singled out, and bad things are going to happen. They're not going to get into a placement in the university or college, or, you know, they're not going to, you know, go to the next year or so. And there are so many of these sort of episodes where they all pretty much end the same. They revise, and everything's all happy and ever after, and everything goes well. This episode says that doesn't happen, and that's one of the key points, and that is people will fail. People do fail in life, and they could put in so much hard work. They could, you know, revise. They could even like isolate themselves, even if it's snowing outside or their friends are wanting to play with them. They'll isolate themselves just to concentrate on these exams, and in the end, you just still fail. And that's one of the more like hardcore, one of the more realistic, one of the more darker moments of The Simpsons, because despite everything, Bart still failed, and it certainly rings a tone with a lot of people. It certainly a lot of people can relate to Bart in this situation. You know, this idea of, you know, you don't feel very smart, you're not very good at exams, you're not very good at, you know, doing tests, and, you know, you try to revise endlessly, and I've been in this position before, and you revise endlessly, and then you get to the exam, and then, despite everything, you give it your best shot, you come out with a bad grade. You know, you failed, basically. And that is brutal, but it's brutally honest, and that's what this episode does. It's brutally honest with its audience. You know, you could be in a Bart Simpson, or you could be a genius, and you could still be in this sort of situation. And I think that's why this is such a great episode, or at least for me, why it's one of the best episodes of The Simpsons ever, because it certainly rings a tone. It certainly resembles what can happen, or what does happen in real life, and I think that's why, for me personally, it is such a relatable, such a perfect episode. Bart Gets an F is a 10 out of 10 episode, and, you know, it's one of the, for many, it's considered the greatest Simpsons episode ever, so there's your answer right there. It is just such a great, great episode. From one fantastic episode to another. It's called Simpson and Delilah. I was about to call it Homer and Delilah. In this episode, Homer, you know, gets this sort of like remedy. He's spent like, I think it's like $1,000 to get this like hair growth remedy, and he gets it and he starts growing hair, and everything's going well for him. Mr. Burns in particular likes it, and he actually gets promoted. And even though he's not necessarily the most intelligent person around, he's actually doing quite well for himself, and everything is going great for him. He also gets this assistant called Kyle, and Kyle is a real motivator for Homer, and Homer needs to do a big speech in front of everyone in the power plant. However, things start turning bad. Kyle gets fired by taking Homer Simpson's flack for taking out money for dental care, I believe, and Bart ends up dropping all of the hair lotion into, I think it's the sink? Yeah, the sink. Oh no, it's all over the floor. He smashes it all over the floor, and Homer loses his hair. He goes bald again. And as a result, because of his appearance being this bald, fat, relatively unshaven man, everything goes wrong for him, and he's about to be fired, but on the last second, once again, he's just not fired, he's demoted completely, and he's back to his original position. And it's a real sad episode in a sense, but it is, once again, it's just such a great episode. Like, this is another 10 out of 10 episode for me personally. I think the idea is, you got a character like Homer. Homer is not bright, but he's trying his best, and this is some of the things that I really like about the older Simpsons in particular, about Homer Simpson in particular, in the olden days, is that he was trying his best. He actually gave a damn about his family. He gave a damn about his work. He gave a damn about everything and everyone. And even despite it all, he still kind of failed. And this is another example of it. And I think the real show stealer, let's be honest now, one of the greatest characters in the Simpsons history, one-off characters I should say, is Kyle. Not only does he have one of the greatest voices out of any Simpsons character, but he is just such a brilliant, unlovable character. You know, he can be stern, but he's also, you know, brutally honest, and he's calm, and he's level-headed, and he's just a real motivator. He is the type of person you'd want as a best friend, and in this case with Homer, you know, with his new set of hair, Kyle is like the perfect motivator. He's the one that assists Homer throughout. He's the one that really should be in Homer's position, but isn't. You know, and it's a shame, you know, I'm kind of glad that he's a one-off character, because if he was the type of character that would reappear every so often, it would kind of get a little bit, how do I put it, it wouldn't be, he would lose all the value, because this episode is perfect as it is, and he is a perfect character, and I'm glad that he's a one-off character. I'm glad that they dedicated to this one single episode, and I think one of the other points to be made is Homer's appearance. This episode mainly has a theme about appearances, and workplace in particular. How Homer, with his set of hair, wearing a suit, he's instantly considered like a brainiac. He's instantly considered one of the greatest men in history, just because of the way he looks. And then when he loses it all, he's the opposite. Everyone doesn't like him anymore because he's a bold, dirty-looking old man, more or less. And it's quite an interesting point to make. It is an interesting and quite, how do I put it? It's got some sort of social commentary about it. How, you know, people only really judge things by appearances. They don't ever judge it by the type of person he is or the type of person they are. There is a later episode might be a following season or so, where once again Homer isn't really doing things well, but because of the appearance of him somehow saving the power plant, everyone thinks that he's a hero, and the reality is he just did it by luck. And I think the idea of, you know, this appearances that are taking over, you know, how people perceive and how people think a workplace should be run, or how a social structure should be commended, it's quite an important message. And like I said, it's just a fantastic episode. Another 10 out of 10 episode. I love it mainly because of Carl. Carl is just such a great character. He is such a fantastic character. I adore Kyle. On to episode 3. Well. After 2 10 out of 10 episodes, we're on to another 10 out of 10 episode, and what else can I say except it's Treehouse of Horror. Treehouse of Horror in general is like some of the best episodes The Simpsons ever do. Like, even in the more modern runs, the Treehouse of Horrors was still like the better episodes. It was still like the best episodes of the entire seasons. And, you know, even though this one isn't what I'd consider my favourite, isn't really my favourite Treehouse of Horror, it is still a very decent Treehouse of Horror. There's 3 individual stories running along, and it takes place in Bart Simpson's treehouse. He's talking to his sister Maggie and Lisa, and they're telling each other stories about, you know, scary stories, trying to scare each other. The first one is, I believe, a poltergeist parody whereby the Simpsons family move into this brand new home, but the brand new home is haunted and full of evil spirits because it's built on an Indian burial ground. And of course, the Simpsons family, or Marge in particular, she understands that this is an evil spirit, and she snaps at it, and eventually they get out of the house after the evil spirit starts to reconsider why he's doing this, and then he decides to destroy himself as opposed to, you know, live with the Simpsons. The second episode is the Kang and Kodos episode. Obviously, those are the two squiggly aliens with the one big eye, and with the sharp teeth and drooling everywhere. So the Simpsons family get abducted by an alien, by the aliens, and they're feeding them constantly. They're giving them all these big meals, and Lisa in particular is getting suspicious about this. She starts figuring out why they're feeding them, and then she finds a book which is How to Cook Humans. And of course, they blow away the dust, and it's actually How to Cook for Humans, and then it's How to Cook for 4 humans, and so on and so forth. But it's revealed that the aliens weren't actually trying to feed the Simpson family up to eat them, but rather they are feeding them to give them, you know, this paradise planet to live on and study them. And Lisa, of course, feels ashamed about it, and the family snap at her, saying that she shouldn't have opened her big mouth, and, you know, it's all her fault that we can't have this paradise anymore. So it's quite a funny, short story. Like I said, it's a beginning. It's like the first of the Treehouse of Horrors. It's not going to be perfect, but it is a decent go. So the final story is The Raven, which is based off of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, and Lisa's telling how it's about this lonely man who's mourning the death of his wife, Lenore, and overcomes a raven that sits on the chamber door, and the raven keeps talking, nevermore, 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 and of course the guy slowly starts to descend into madness. And I feel like this is like the only, you know, horror story which is actually true to the original poem. I don't think anything about it is completely different, and I actually think that it is oh shit, the most like relatable, most like, how do I put, I'm losing the word to live. Most similar to the original story, as opposed to the other two which are just downright parodies. This one's like the only one that is pure horror, more or less. There's a few gags here and there. And obviously, you know, you have Marge's, Lenore's painting, and you have Homer, and of course Bart, you know, being Bart as the Raven. Of course, the episode ends with Homer, who's been listening to these stories, scared shitless and shivering in bed, you know, terrified to go to sleep. But as a first Treehouse of Horror, it is decent. Obviously, it's not like in my top 5, I would say. It's not in my top 5. There are some other ones which I thoroughly enjoy. There's one from season 10, which is one of the best. And of course, I believe it's Treehouse of Horror 3 or 4, which is the Bram Stoker Dracula parody. That one's another one of my favourites. Oh, it's cold. Talking about bloody Treehouse of Horror, and then all of a sudden it's like hopping up. But overall, the Treehouse of Horror, the first episode is a great attempt. It's a great first attempt. It is a great, first Treehouse of Horror, I should say. It's overall, it's just a great episode. It's, you know, full of interesting stories, interesting scenarios, and it introduces some of the you know, more likeable. It introduces some of the characters that we're going to see a lot more often, like Kang and Kodos. So, you know, it's a decent episode. Like I said, it's not the best Treehouse of Horror, but it is the first, so you gotta give it that. And like I said, it's still a 10 out of 10 episode. You know, I'm not criticising it whatsoever. It's enjoyable as fuck. Episode 4's got quite a long name. It's 2 cars in every garage and 3 eyes on every fish. So this episode, Mr. Burns decides he's going to, you know, run for mayor, to be a politician. And he wants to beat this other mayor because he thinks that he should have all the political power, blah blah blah. And this comes after a scandal in which, Mr. Burns' power plant has caused a fish to have 3 eyes. And of course this scandal has hit, you know, the power plant, and so Mr. Burns decided he's going to join a political career so he can clear his name and basically promote his own brand for greed. Marge, on the other hand, has other ideas. She doesn't want Mr. Burns to do this. And unfortunately for her, Homer is sort of the representative for Burns, and he's going to come over for dinner. Marge decides she's going to humiliate him. She's going to humiliate him on live television, which she does so successfully, and Burns loses the election. The other mayor is voted in. Happy ever after. It's a decent episode. Like I said, it's not like it's not entertaining. You know, I will admit I'm not a fan of politics. I don't like politics being shoehorned into anything at all. And I think what makes this one decent is that, unlike a modern Simpsons episode where it's just quite clear who they're taking the piss out of, they're saying, oh, this is a Republican, he's evil, but this is a Democrat, he's nice. This one just says, you know, these are just, you know, two random politicians. Both are different. Mr. Burns is a greedy scumbag who's trying to look out for himself and is trying to, you know, do things based on a scandal that has hit him. While this other politician is trying everything she can do to make Springfield a better place, but she's not very strong and she isn't like as, you know, aggressive as Mr. Burns was, you know, forefronting. Obviously, I do like some of the jokes in this. I like, you know, the way Mr. Burns, you know, tries to cover himself up. I love how, you know, they're trying to advise him on how to be this proper politician, and he's just awful at his job. You know, he can't even smile properly, he can't even, you know, give kids candy and pretend to be nice for even a second. Like, he fails to lift things up because he's so weak and scrawny. And, you know, I do think that's quite a good gag. And obviously Blinky, who is the three-eyed fish, this is his first ever appearance, and it's great to see Blinky's appearance, and probably his only appearance really, if you really think about it, despite how popular Blinky was. Or at least I remember Blinky being popular back in when I used to read all these Simpsons comic books and have the sticker books. Blinky would always appear. But I digress. So the idea of Blinky, you know, being basically the creature that starts all this off, the creature that is responsible for all this chaos, it's an interesting take. It's you know, it also talks about, you know, how how we mess with the environment now. We can really screw around with nature. And how politicians in general love to like pretend that, oh, nothing's going wrong, there's no global warming. By the way, it's February and it's sunny outside. It's boiling. You know, there's no pollution, and it won't ever affect us. The plastic doesn't kill fish. You know, and it does that quite perfectly in this episode because Binky is this three-eyed fish, and Mr. Burns, his excuse is, oh, it's evolution. Clearly, you know, look at this Charles Darwin, you know, telling us this is evolution. I mean, it's clear that the fish would just grow three eyes. I mean, what's next? A big, like, legs or something like that? And it's ridiculous, but at the end of the day, it's kind of what, you know, it's kind of what happens in real life. And then you have the actual dinner pie, which, once again, reminiscent of real life, with real life politicians when they're eating, and then they awkwardly eat, and then they do something really stupid, and everyone's like taking photographs, they're filming, you know, this awkwardness and this like one fatal mistake. Like in this case, he spits out the fish because Marge feeds him Binky because, you know, she wants to make a point. Hey, if the rivers isn't like full of radiation and this fish isn't radioactive, why don't you eat him? After all, he's meant to be an evolved fish, and obviously he eats it, but it's so awkward he spits it out. And just like real life, that happens a lot in politics. You know, they awkwardly eat and then they spit it out, and everyone like makes a field day about it. And it happens in this; they make a field day out of it. And you know, it's quite subtle though. It's not like in your face, here's politics everywhere, you know, this is clearly right wing, this is clearly left wing. No, they don't say that, they don't do that, they just keep it simple. They just do more or less a political parody, show a corrupt person who's trying to look after his own skin after a scandal, and is trying everything he can to basically get his own way, and it all falls apart over the silliest of matters. And I enjoy it for that. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like a perfect episode or at all, but I wouldn't say it's a bad episode whatsoever. It's certainly a 7, maybe 8 out of 10 episode, but overall, it's a decent episode. Hell of a long title though. Dancing Homer. Dancing Homer is quite an interesting episode because it's the events of the episode have happened already, and what you get is Homer is in a bar. He's quite depressed, and he's talking about how he went to the big city and how he became this big mascot for this baseball team. And he then tells his friends Moe and Barney, Carl and Lenny, about what happened. And he says, well, it all started, they're at a Springfield game, and Homer, who was getting really rowdy with the game, decides he starts dancing, and everyone loves him. And he becomes this big sensation. So eventually, Homer, he becomes such a sensation that he's then moved to the big city, so he's going to do it for the big games. However, while there, no one really likes him. He's lost all the fame and popularity, even though he's just doing what he's best at. And eventually he leaves quite humiliated, downright depressed, and, this is him telling his story. But it's quite a nice episode. It's not like a horrible episode whereby, everything falls apart. This is a common theme with season 2 in general. It's the type of season where a lot of these episodes are downright, things are just going wrong, and they hit this rock bottom, and then near the end it kind of comes back again. And in this case it does for Homer. Homer is, he's making himself a bit of a star. He's making himself, he's made himself quite famous, and everyone loves him, and he's enjoying it. And with the idea of going to the big C, everyone in his family, including Homer, is excited. He's excited that he's finally gotten somewhere in life. However, now, once you're in this bigger environment, despite everything, what you were good at isn't good here. Whereas the more niche and smaller environment like Springfield is, a better place to do things, if you know what I mean. So, overall, it's a decent episode. Overall, it's a good episode. It's not like as fantastic as, say, the first 3 episodes in the season, but it's still a decent episode. And I like how the ending is, his friends just say, you were good, you were great at what you did. And Homer, Homer's uplifted, and it's a decent episode. It's a nice episode. It's one of those episodes that I know this might sound like criticism, which it kind of is. It's one of those time waster episodes. One of those episodes which doesn't really have a purpose to exist, but is just there to fill in a slot and say, hey, look, we got at least 13 episodes in the season, give us our paycheck. Although this has actually 21 episodes in series 2. At least according to the DVD. So, yeah, it's an alright episode. I wouldn't say it's perfect. It's a 7 out of 10. Like I said, there's not really much to talk about because it's not really a impactful episode. That's the other issue about it. It's not really impactful. It's just an episode. So after 2 rather unimpactful episodes, we have an episode which is once again considered by many one of the best episodes ever. In fact, I was reading up beforehand that this was rated 6th on a TV guide as the greatest Simpsons episode. So we're in good hands, and this is Dead Pudding Society. I love this episode. So basically, Bart is good at miniature golf, and Homer's impressed, but at the same time, Ned's son, Todd, he's also really good at miniature golf, and Homer and Ned soon become quite competitive, and this is like probably the first time that we see Ned Flanders actually get quite pissed off with Homer, because Homer, he doesn't like Flanders, and Flanders, doesn't like Homer's attitude, and they finally have this big fight, and they decide, you know what, there's going to be a competition coming up, your son versus my son, and whoever wins, whoever's son loses, has to wear the wife's garment and mow the lawn out in public. And obviously this brings out a brilliant rivalry between the 2 parents. Meanwhile, Bart and Todd, they don't hate each other. They don't hate each other whatsoever. They just, they just want to play this game just for the sake of it. You know, they're doing it to impress their dads, and it's an interesting setup. And in the end, they both decide, you know what, we're both going to forfeit. We can't be bothered with this. We don't want our fathers fighting over each other and, you know, obsessing over us. So we're just going to forfeit. And it ends on such a brilliant and funny note, whereby both the parents, both the fathers decide they're going to mow the lawn in their wife's garments, but Ned Flanders, to Homer's dismay, who, you know, because Homer's grumbling, oh, I hate doing this, but at least Flanders is doing it as well. But to Homer's dismay, Flanders says, you know what, I'm quite enjoying this. And it's just such a funny episode. This is just one of those really funny and enjoyable episodes. Once again, it's a 10 out of 10 episode. Like, I really enjoy this episode a lot. Everything about it is done quite well. It's structured quite well, you know. It's a proper, you know, first act, second act, third act. You know, the first act is the two, you know, discovering that they're quite good at golf, and then the two training up, and then the final act is the actual competition, and then obviously the punishment for the parents. And I think something else that is quite intriguing about this episode is how both Ned and Homer treat their child in a competitive state. Because Ned is a bit more relaxed, a bit more friendly, even if he is a bit, you know, religious, overly religious, just to say. Homer, on the other hand, you know, he's almost torturing Bart with the amount of training he wants him to do, and it's, you know, and it's not like torture like crap episodes like On a Clear Day, I Can't See My Sister. No, I mean torture as in, you know, a humorous, over the top. Plus Bart gets away from it 99% of the time, so he doesn't really, you know, suffer torment that much. And it is interesting to see how the two, you know, compete, because, and how they interact with each other. You know, this is, you know, Ned is often more friendly, more calm, and then as soon as Homer decides he's going to start attacking his son, as soon as he starts attacking Ned, as soon as he gets a little bit too competitive for Ned's liking, he then does snap. And then, you know, in comparison to Homer, who is like a ticking time bomb, you know, all you have to do is say something that he doesn't like and he'll attack you. You know, the same goes with Bart and Todd. You know, Todd is more quiet, more reserved, while Bart is a bit more loudmouth and will talk back to his parents. And when they're in the golfing situation, they're both, you know, pleasant to each other, whereas Ned and Homer are like snapping at each other, and, you know, Ned is hoping, you know, both kids are alright, but, you know, Homer is hoping that Todd gets crushed and murdered horribly, you know. It's a brilliant way of comparing two families, it's a brilliant way of comparing two characters, and it's a brilliant way of showing how they're quite similar while at the same time being completely different in when it comes to being quite competitive. And I really just enjoyed this episode. It's just a really funny episode, and it's played out really well, it's structured perfectly. It's a brilliant episode, it's fantastic. So yeah, again, 10 out of 10. Once again, it's one of my favourite episodes, so obviously I'm going to be a lot more biased than most people when it comes to certain episodes, but you know what, I love this episode. So Bart versus Thanksgiving. From what I read, it actually divided a lot of people when this was initially released, because it's not a nice episode, this one. It's a very cruel episode. But here's the thing about cruelty in shows. You can either do it really right, or you can do it quite wrong. In the sense of, like, On a Clear Day, I Can't See My Sister, that's cruelty done wrong. It's unfunny, it's just unlikable, and it's annoying, it's torturous, as I should say. Whereas this episode is cruel, but it's cruel in the sense that it's got a point, you know. It's not cruel as in, you know, let's just torture this character endlessly. No, it's got a point why this is a cruel episode. So, Thanksgiving is coming up. Bart is being a loudmouth, he's being a little brat. Meanwhile, Lisa is preparing this model, and she wants to, you know, impress her family, an extended family, you know, that includes Patty and Selma and Marge's mum and Grandpa Simpson. And they're all going to impress, you know, she wants to impress them with this beautiful, you know, little model, and Bart he can give a shit. You know, he just wants to eat turkey and be over with it. You know, that's his version of Thanksgiving. And I'm going to say this right now, us Brits don't really celebrate Thanksgiving, so I don't know much about it other than it's based on a holiday in which the Indians, the Native Indians, Native Americans I should say, gave turkeys out to the to the people who came over. And let's just say I don't really know much other than the Indians were fucking slaughtered afterwards, so it's not a nice holiday to celebrate. But during the dinner, Lisa's model, she decides to show it in front of everyone, but Bart is budging out of the way saying, hey, move it sister, I got my turkey right here, I'm going to give it to her, and they start fighting with each other because both of them are getting each other's throats, and eventually Bart knocks the model into the fireplace and it bursts into a ball of flames. Lisa runs up crying while Bart, doesn't feel like he's done anything wrong. All he wanted was just to have turkey and leave. Simple as that. Lisa was making such a big deal over this stupid little model, and she's made it for no reason why, and Bart is then sent to his room. He's pissed off about it and decides he's going to escape. So he does. He escapes with Santa's little helper, and they go on a little bit of a journey together. And throughout this journey, Bart starts seeing different ways people are celebrating Thanksgiving. You have Mr. Burns, which is celebrating this big mansion, but he is celebrating alone. He can care less, and he's enjoying his wealth more than he enjoys anything else. And then you have, this homeless shelter, in which all these people are just lining up to have this one meal, just for one day. Just have this nice meal. And in this homeless shelter, I want to talk about this scene, because this scene is such a fantastic and well done scene. This homeless shelter scene is probably one of the best scenes in Simpsons history. And he witnesses how these people are behaving. They're all more or less in their own little culture, their own little society, and they're friendly towards each other. They ask each other, how do you get this way? How do you get this way? How that, and Bart starts to realise, his own selfish greed during the first part of the episode was out of order, but at the same time he has these horrible, delusions that maybe once he returns, everyone will torture him and blame him for absolutely everything, and of course he doesn't want to go back there if they're going to treat him like shit. So he decides he's going to stay out, and while with these homeless people, he sees how they're not taking things for granted. They're just trying to live. They're just trying to do things their way. And what's really perfect about this episode, what's absolutely fantastic, is when they decide when Kent Brockman comes over and visits, and he's interviewing them, and he interviews Bart, and that's how the Simpson family realised, holy shit, Bart's in a homeless shelter, because they're wondering where he's gone at this point, why he's sick about him. And Lisa herself becomes quite regretful and thinks, maybe I shouldn't have been a bit of a show-off, but at the same time, Bart, while at the homeless shelter, he starts to think, maybe I shouldn't have been a greedy little shit. And while Kent Brockman's there, Kent Brockman simply says, I can smell an enemy coming up for this one, after he turns off the camera. And of course, the homeless people just give him a little snarl. And I think that's such a perfect bit. That is such a perfect scene, because it perfectly represents mainstream media in one short, and I don't even think it was a minute long, less than a minute, and that represents mainstream media perfectly. The way they just pretend to care about these poor people, these poor homeless people, and really, they don't care about it. They just want an Emmy, or they just want, an award. They just want a pat on the back and say, good job, you're doing this, And obviously that isn't the main focus of the episode, I should point out. I'm just pointing out this one particular scene because it's such a great scene in the entirety of the episode. So Bart decides, all this, he starts to regret what he did. And Lisa herself, she's in her room and she starts to regret, because they both seem like, they both were wrong, but at the same time they both were right about each other, Bart shouldn't have been a greedy asshole. He shouldn't have been a prick. He shouldn't have chucked the bottle into the fire. He shouldn't have broken it. Lisa, at the same time, shouldn't have shown off. She shouldn't have been, pushing her little model in front of everyone, and shouldn't have been interrupting Bart, who was bringing out the food, and both characters share the responsibility. Both characters share the blame. And Bart comes home and he decides he's going to jump on the roof, hide there. And of course, Lisa sees him and they both sit on the roof and they discuss. They say sorry. They both say, we are both at fault here, but at the same time, not so much so that we're both to be, held completely responsible. And it ends such a nice way. And as an episode, it is a cruel episode, Bart is a dickhead, but he also regrets and does have a guilty conscience. Lisa, at the same time, she is a show-off. She wants to be the centre of attention. And there's this other great scene where she comes back downstairs and she has this poem she's about to read out loud, and everyone in the family just ignores it. They just rush over to the telly. And she's like reading the poem, and it's quite literally, woe is me, and it kind of perfectly represents a balance of power. You've got Bart, who is this, who is more or less an egotistical maniac and wants to do things his way, and everyone else is wrong. Whereas Lisa, she's more or less a narcissist. She wants herself to be the centre of attention, but then, everything doesn't really go according to plan once someone decides to butt in and make themselves the centre of attention. And of course it balances each other out, and eventually the two realise that they're both wrong. And you don't get that a lot with modern Simpsons episodes. I did a 40-minute video, I did a real video, about the issue of Lisa Simpson episodes. And this is one of the things that I was talking about, how Lisa doesn't really feel sorry or have comeuppance for anything she does. And in this episode, even though she isn't necessarily, at fault completely, I would say she still owes up to it. She still admits, maybe I shouldn't have been, too much, of an attention whore. Maybe I should have just ease it a bit, and we both could have had our own way equally, and she just discusses it with Bart. They both apologise to each other, and you don't get that with modern Simpson episodes. Instead, they have a paddy, and Bart, mostly 99% of the time, apologises for being a dick, even though Lisa should also apologise, but that never happens. And this is how you do a cruel episode right, ladies and gentlemen. This is how you do a dark but cruel episode right. And I do think this is a great episode. Like I said, there are a few things I think they should have really made Lisa a bit more responsible if they're going to make Lisa apologise as well. I feel like she didn't actually need to say sorry for once. But overall, it's still a great episode. Bart vs. Thanksgiving is a 9 out of 10 for me. Bart the Daredevil for many is another one of those great episodes. It's classic. I mean, even I think it's a classic. And I think what makes Bart the Daredevil such a great episode is, for me personally, I've always been a fan of Jackass. I've always been a fan of Wild Boys, Dirty Sanchez, The Dude Sons, Viva La Bam. I've always been a fan of those shows, and I have them all on DVD. That's how much I love them. I watch them quite a lot. Even now, I still watch them quite a lot. And when I was young, I watched some of this crap. I did do some stupid things. I was in a washing basket once when I was really young. I went downstairs and it didn't go so well. I'm going to leave it at that. So, an episode where Bart sees a daredevil. In this case, it's a biker who goes through these flaming hoops and over these helicopters and over these school buses and over these alligators in a pool and what have you. It's over the top, silly goofiness, and I love it. And on the way he gets completely injured. He's thrashed. He's destroyed. And Bart, despite seeing this man quite literally, torn to shreds, wants to become a daredevil. And he starts doing all these tricks and stunts in school, and everyone loves him. And of course, Lisa, she gets concerned, especially when Bart says that he wants to jump the Springfield Gorge. So she tells the parents, and Homer in particular is very shocked and angry about it. And of course, Bart doesn't really listen to Homer, so Homer doesn't do anything. Homer does try to block him from doing anything. He tries to stop him from exiting the room, makes him promise you're not going to do it, and Bart doesn't really listen. So Lisa then takes him to the Daredevil, who is in hospital, covered head to toe with bandages. And once again, it's all building up to this gorge jump, and everyone still thinks that Bart's still doing it, and Bart is told by the Daredevil, why don't you just go ahead and do it? Go ahead and do it. Of course, that concerns Lisa even more. I've just realised I've gotten those two scenes the wrong way around. She actually visits Daredevil first, and then tells the parents, because Daredevil says go ahead and do it. And after making a promise to Homer, Bart then sneaks out, gets his skateboard on, and everyone's watching. And he decides to get to the top of Springfield Gorge, and he's about to jump over, well, the top of the cliff to go through the gorge. And Homer arrives, and he telling Bart off, and they both say they love each other. And Homer says, you know what, if you're going to kill yourself, then I am going to show you, I'm going to do it myself, and I'm going to show you how dangerous it is, and of course Bart says, don't do it, Dad, and of course they have a hug, but as they're hugging, Homer slowly inches ever so towards the edge of the cliff, and what happens is quite possibly one of the most famous Simpsons moments ever, and it is one of the most hilarious moments in the Simpsons ever. This episode is brilliant for its build-up. Once again, it's a well-structured episode. It has Bart getting inspired. It has Bart, doing all these stunts, and then, planning on this bigger jump, which is Springfield Gorge. And this finale, this actual Springfield Gorge jump, is so great. Homer accidentally, on the skateboard, still stood on it. He drifts back, and then he slides down the cliff. And as he's sliding, he starts hitting an adrenaline rush, and he thinks, oh yeah, this is great. And then he's jumping over, and he's going, woohoo, I'm about to meet the end. And then he starts falling, and he hits every single branch, stone, everything. It's hilarious. And it gets even better, From one joke after another, they then decide they're going to get onto, they're going to get Homer into a hospital, into an ambulance, and they're going to drive away. And the ambulance hits the friggin' tree. Homer slides out of the bed and falls down again. And he's then helicopter grabs him, and it ends on such a great note. And Homer says to the Daredevil, you think you have it tough, try raising my kids. And it's like one gag after another. This final act, this third structure, this final part is one joke after another, and it is gorgeous. It is hilarious. Everything about it is fantastic. I love it so much. It's such a great way of ending an episode. It's such a great way of actually, it's actually such a great way of ending an episode and building it up and getting there. That said, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a 10 out of 10 episode. I wouldn't say that. It's certainly up there in the higher numbers. I dare say maybe 9 out of 10, maybe. 8 most likely, 9 is a maybe. But regardless, Bart the Daredevil is just it's a great episode. It's a funny episode, it's a fantastic episode, it's just great. Now, we live in a world where, we've got two sets of people. You've got people who overreact to things and, think they're offensive and that they should be censored and banned. And you got people who, hate things before it even arrives because it might have a female lead. I mean, take a look at Captain Marvel at this moment in time. I mean, people are already getting in a pissy mood because it has a fucking female lead character, but, let's pretend for a second that these people don't exist. Pretend that there are no SJWs. Pretend that there are no alt-rights. And pretend that there is balance. Well, this episode is a perfect representation of what modern day is like. Itchy and Scratchy and Marge. Once again, it's one of the best episodes of The Simpsons ever, so you already know it's a 10 out of 10 episode. It is so representative of modern day. It really is. It's so relatable. It's PC culture gone mad, and it's basically what happens is Maggie hits her father over the head with a hammer. And this is after she's watched an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon. And Itchy and Scratchy is an over-the-top, gory violence based on Tom and Jerry, I should say. I was about to say Tommy and Jerry. Based on Tom and Jerry. And Marge, horrified by this incident, decides she's going to blame cartoons. She's going to blame it all on cartoons. And she starts to protest. And at first people think this is all just a joke. It's not going to do anything, and they're just going to pretend that this is just a deluded woman. Just like in real life, because people ignore, these protesters or these complaints, it eventually gets worse and it builds up, and eventually it's too strong of an army to face against. And as a result, they give in to pressure. And Marge gets her own way. She then decides she's going to, give them advice on how to make the show appropriate. So this more PC version of Itchy and Scratchy is shown, and it's such a perfect visual representation of what it would be like. They're just sitting there in the rocking chairs slowly, and they're giving tea, and they say, "Do you want some tea?" "Yes." And it's such a pathetic but beautifully done gag, and as a result, kids don't like it. They want to see what they want to see. They want to see a cat and a mouse beat each other to death, basically. And basically, kids go outside and they look around them and they see such a beautiful, beautiful little world, and they play outside. They play with the elderly. They do all these amazing things because they've been standing in front of a TV for so long. And Marge, of course, is kind of glad about this. However, things take a turn for the worse for her envisionment for a perfect world. And that is the idea of a statue coming over to Springfield Museum. However, women are protesting in anger because the statue has male genitalia and it's exposed. And of course, Marge doesn't see a reason for this because at the end of the day, it's art. And of course, during a live TV debate, Monroe, the psychiatrist, he points out her hypocrisy, saying you're going to censor one form of art, but you're going to keep this one. It just seems hypocritical, and of course, she's exposed on live television as this hypocrite, and Marge realises this, and she decides, you know what, okay, I don't like these TV shows, but if I'm going to censor this while not censoring this, I might as well give in. And she does, and in the end, Marge enjoys the statue with her husband, although she's upset that the kids won't be able to see it because they're sat in front of the TV while Homer jokes that, guess what, they got a school trip there. So, it ends on a sort of high note. And the episode is such a relatable episode to today. How people are obsessed with censoring things, and yet they will keep another thing. And yet, all because they have their own personal agendas. And it's ridiculous how this is such a representative episode of today. And how it relates to today. One of the other things I should point out is how this episode talks about violence in the media, or violence in TV shows, movies, and what have you, music, video games.
And this was released in 1990. This was a decade, the 90s, a decade in which television was at war, or the mainstream media was at war with people. How music was finally saying to people, you know what, don't listen to the TV. The TV's just going to bullshit, it's just going to fearmonger and all that. You know, how TV shows themselves were also saying about this issue, while also saying, you know what, censorship is bad, we should be allowed to do whatever the hell we want, but we don't want to, you know, be as creative as we want. And what's interesting is, because it's released in 1990, 9 years later, colour buying will happen, in 1999. And what happens in this episode where Marge censors things because she thinks a TV show is creating violence for kids happens exactly in the aftermath of colour buying. TV shows, movies, music, video games were seen as devil's advocate, and everyone's blaming that for violence. And they still do now. You know, and it's interesting how, you know, during this short period of the 90s, people were finally resisting against the mainstream media, and were finally figuring out, you know what, why are we listening to you? Why are we, you know, being told that we should fear video games, or we should fear, you know, television program or movie or what have you. You know, if it's not going to cause any violence. And it's a great episode talking about how censorship can go a little bit too wayward, how PC culture can really screw things over, and how violence in the media and violence in TV shows and all that, violence in real life does not really correlate to each other. You know, Maggie is a baby. For one thing, Maggie is a baby, and she immediately shows her father care. And then she hits him on the head after seeing a cartoon cat. She's a baby. That's the important thing to know. You know, she isn't a adult or a kid who wouldn't do those things because they know it's not real. And it is just a great episode. It really is a brilliant episode. It's certainly a 10 out of 10 episode, and it has so much relevance today. So much. Alright, last episode for part 1 of season 2 is Bart Gets Hit by a Car. Now this is quite a famous episode because I believe this is like one of the only few episodes which has an actual title at the very beginning. Because most episodes don't do that. Most episodes just begin and go ahead with the episode. So Bart gets hit by a car. So Bart gets hit by a car. He's on a skateboard and he's hit by Mr. Burns in his car. Mr. Burns prefers to just leave him there to die, but Mr. Smithers, who's a bit more kind, decides to go take the kid to hospital. And Bart actually does die in hospital. He goes to heaven and then he's dropped into hell, and he loves hell, but then he's dragged back to life, and of course he's upset about that. So eventually Homer gets a lawyer, and this lawyer, I feel bad, and bollocks, I feel bad because I should know his name. It's the Troy McClure guy who sadly got murdered. He plays the lawyer, and he's this corrupt and sleazebag of a lawyer. And so they're going to take Mr. Burns to court, which they do. But instead of being truthful and honest to the court, they lie about everything, and they make it all exaggerated and make Mr. Burns look like a bad guy. Now Mr. Burns is a dickhead. He won't give them any money, he's so full of himself, and he doesn't believe he's done anything wrong. So what's really interesting about Bart Gets Hit by a Car is that you got these two, more or less these 2 point of views, these two clashing, these two conflicts, and you got Mr. Burns, who doesn't deserve to win this court case, and he does in the end, but he doesn't deserve to, because he is this nasty, nasty man, and he doesn't have any regret. He deserves to be locked up. He was going to leave the kid to die. Bart, on the other hand, or in this case Homer, it's nuts, isn't it? Hutz and Bart they're all lying and they're making it into this worse than imaginable, and they want all the money in the world themselves. So at the end of the day, you have these two real conflicts with each other, and they're both, you know, you don't really want to support Bart in this case because Bart's lying and he's making it worse than it actually was. While Mr. Burns, you don't want to support him because he purposely didn't give a shit. He purposely wanted this kid just to die on the street, and he's not going to give him any money regardless. So it's really an interesting episode because you don't really want to support either side, but you kind of have to. So, yeah. It's an interesting episode, and I certainly enjoy it. I think it's a great episode, but, you know, at the end of the day, what can I say, except it doesn't end well for the Simpsons. They don't get anything. Mr. Burns gets away with it, and Homer and Marge do have a little bit of a breakup, but they do make up in the end, because Homer realises, you know, we shouldn't have lied. We should have just been truthful, and everything would have been fine. And I think that's quite an important key about this episode. If they didn't lie, things would have been probably alright for them. But they did, and as a result, they actually screwed themselves over. So it's a really interesting episode, and I certainly enjoy it. It's an 8 out of 10 for me, simply because I think, like, Mr. Burns should have had some sort of comeuppance, but at the end of the day, it's nice to see that it's an interesting episode. It's interesting to see that both of them aren't necessarily, you know, pure. The why I'm stopping now is A, SD cards are running out of space, B, my cough is getting worse, my cold is getting worse, and C, I've more or less gone halfway through. I haven't actually gone to episode 11, which is the actual halfway point, but I've gotten to episode 10. That's fair enough. Of course, next time, doing the second half of season 2, hopefully it won't take months, but if it does, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Who knows, it might have to be done like over the course of a few days. I might be wearing different shirts and jumpers over these. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed part 1 of season 2 of The Simpsons, and I'll see you some other time.